Sullen, why? What have you done to yourself?
Sullen Decius died aboard the Eisenstein. His existence is at an end. I live now. I am the pestilent champion. I am the Lord of Flies.
Welcome to Fightmaster, the show where we analyze the galaxy's greatest warriors and break down their most iconic duels. My name is Precognition, and today we look at a duel that took place upon the surface of Luna, Terra's sole moon. An unusual battle for the far future, as it features a great deal of both unarmed fighting and upper body grappling. A tragic clash between a former student and teacher at the outset of the Horus Heresy, in which the Legion of One, Battle Captain Nathaniel Garro, faced the Lord of Flies, a creature that had grown from the diseased form of the greatest duelist among Garro's command squad, once called Sullen Decius. Having successfully led the frigate Eisenstein in a desperate flight to inform the Emperor of Horus's treachery, Garro and his remaining loyalist Death Guard had been placed in a sort of containment, guarded by the Sisters of Silence in a facility upon Luna, while the High Lords of Terra decided what was to be done with the errant Space Marines. During this confinement, the Astartes took it upon themselves to keep a deathbed vigil over one of their number, the young prodigy Sullen Decius, who had been struck down by a Nurgle-infused blade that was drawing power directly from the warp, inflicting upon the poor Space Marine an ailment that seemed to shift from one disease to another, pushing even post-human physiology beyond its limits. But Decius was a member of the Death Guard, a legion famed for their preternatural durability. Even though each moment was agony, even as his body turned against him, spewing noxious gases and spawning insects that would gnaw his flesh, Decius lived on, holding firm to the Death Guard philosophy that they fight as long as they breathe, and perhaps some slim hope that his protege could be saved. Garro refused to give Decius the Emperor's mercy, despite the younger Marine's pleas, and despite the advice of his apothecary. It was a choice he would come to regret. Wielding the power blade Libertas, a weapon modeled after a European broadsword, Garro enters most fights with a blade held in one hand and his bolt pistol in the other. Versatile and utilitarian compared to most of his notoriously stubborn legion, Garro is nevertheless a relentless foe, softening most enemies up from a distance with his bolt pistol, after which Garro enters into mid-range, where in classic Death Guard fashion, he meets an enemy head-to-head. However, there are two things that separate the battle captain from his contemporaries within Mortarian's legion. The first, Garro's excellent guard. Where many Death Guard will take a hit to give one, Nathaniel Garro's style is that of an aggressive counter-striker. What I mean by this, he places himself frequently inside the enemy's range, where he actively knocks enemy attacks aside in specific ways to create the openings he wants. If Garro cannot finish a fight with his blade, he will often take it to extreme close range. While the sword Libertas is not particularly well suited to this task, Nathaniel has a highly developed clinch game, or for those not familiar with the term, grappling whilst standing up. In particular, his ability to land powerful punches without any space is among the best of any Astartes. The captain's protege, Sullen Decius, also favored entering most fights with a bolt pistol in hand. Where he differs, however, is he favored the use of a power fist to boost his already prodigious strength. A skilled slugger, Decius was extremely adept at setting himself up to deliver killing blows with the heavy weapon. The Lord of Flies, however, was no longer Sullen Decius. Trapped in a deathless state, the young Astartes endured new agonies every day. Toxic and infectious, his own brothers had locked him away in a sealed pod. His only company, the maggots that grew from and feasted upon his own flesh. In this seemingly endless torment, the staunchly secular Space Marine did the unthinkable. He prayed. And to Salen's shock, something replied. It offered him a chance to be free of pain, power, and most of all, the opportunity at a life beyond a rotting, forgotten oddity. A deal perhaps no one could refuse. What emerged from Decius's containment pod was a possessed creature, armed with brutal talons on all four limbs, a monstrous strength, durability, and perhaps most powerful, a choking swarm of flies that would inhibit enemies, hide him, and even heal their lord by entering any wounds he took, seamlessly replacing the injured flesh. Still in possession of Decius's skill, imbued as he was, the Lord of Flies had little issue ambushing and dispatching several of his former brothers. Breaking out into the wider complex, he even began to slaughter Sisters of Silence. Following Vox signals and the trail of destruction, Battle Captain Garro led a squad of his remaining best to engage the thing that had once been his student, pursuing it to a series of multi-level catwalks. The Lord of Flies, however, had chosen its battleground well. Surrounded by walls full of oxygen and fuel lines for the great lunar shipyards, it forced Garro to order his marines not to use their bolters, leaving the Astartes to defend themselves with melee weapons and harsh language. With Sisters of Silence cutting off the exits, the Space Marines drove into the flies enveloping the walkways. Fighting his way through the choking swarm, Garro was too late to stop several of his brothers being slain, but he soon came face to face with the pestilent champion. Squaring up and meeting each other head-on, the demon and the Space Marine captain engaged in a frenetic contest of blade and talon. The greater strength of the creature countered by Garro's greater reach. The greater reach of Garro's weapon countered by the creature's ability to threaten equally with all its limbs. What followed was high-risk scissors-paper-rock, as they both stayed in range trying to break the other's guard or posture with strength and blade skill alone. Footwork taken almost entirely out of the equation. Instantly, Garro realized Decius was faster and stronger than the already talented young Marine had ever been before. If the battle captain could not stop him here, the remaining Space Marines in the facility would not be a match for the Lord of Flies. Struggling to bear the weight of the combatants, the catwalk they stood upon was easy prey for Garro, who slashed Libertas across it, causing the walkway to collapse, and the former student and teacher tumbled several stories down, fighting all the way. Infuriated at being left behind, the swarm of flies converged and sped down to the two combatants, enveloping Garro in thick layers of demonic insects. Burning enough away with the field of his power sword that he could at least fight, Garro repelled several rushes from the Lord of Flies, blocking talons from all angles with his blade and replacement mechanical leg. Countering the final rush with a pommel strike, the battle captain engaged the Lord of Flies in a clinch, something the creature initially welcomed, until Garro landed a barrage of short-range punches, causing the Lord of Flies to disengage so it could regenerate its shattered skull. Pressing the advantage, Garro voxed the overlooking Sisters of Silence, having them open a nearby airlock. The explosive decompression ripping the swarm of flies out into Lunar's airless surface, followed shortly by all manner of debris, and the two combatants themselves, having been tossed in different directions. With the airlock ceiling behind them, the former master and protege made preparations for their final clash. The Lord of Flies had been stripped of his regenerative swarm, the insects freezing to death in the airless void. Garro had been separated from his power blade, and his armor punctured, slowly leaking air. Both man and monster were hurt and vulnerable, both no longer benefiting from the facility's artificial gravity. Spotting his weapon but not his foe, the Space Marine bounced across a large crater to regain Libertas. The Lord of Flies, however, had predicted this, ambushing its former mentor by bursting out of the soft lunar powder beneath where the sword rested, knocking the blade tumbling away. The demon grappled Garro. The two struck at each other, rolling about the crater before separating once more. The battle captain landed a heavy high kick, shattering one of his former students' eyes. This time, there would be no regeneration. Refusing to accept defeat, the Lord of Flies countered with a taloned strike to the abdomen, forcing Garro up against the lip of the crater. Its vision impeded. A close-range battle against the unarmed Garro made the most sense. Clinching the Space Marine, the demon host ripped away Garro's chest piece, before puncturing his power armor and flesh several times with its bladed hands. Unable to continue matching the creature's speed and strength, Garro gave up resisting the grapple from his foe, instead freeing his hand to seize a moon rock, which he used to bludgeon the demon's jaw into mush. Falling back, the Lord of Flies attempted to hold its broken head together. Though wounded, Nathaniel Garro was filled with purpose. Striding forth, he spotted his power blade as though guided to it. Taking up Libertas once more, he finally, gratefully, gave Solon Decius the mercy the young man deserved. And so concluded one of the most savage contests of the early Horus Heresy. Garro coming out on top, I believe, because of his excellent inside fighting skills. Face-to-face, grueling kinds of fights. A skill set the Death Guard often overlook, even as it complements their natural or unnatural durability. Thanks for watching. Let me know what other fights you would like to hear broken down, and as always, I'll see you in the future.